Congressional leadership. We're going to roll through this pretty quickly. For the House of Representatives, you need to know that the Speaker of the House is the most powerful person in the House of Representatives and arguably in Congress, especially over taxing and spending legislation, since the House of Representatives has power of the purse. They're second in line to the president if anything happens to the president and the vice president. Of course, as Speaker, they preside over the House, and they have the power to make committee assignments for majority party members. The Speaker is going to be a member of the majority party. So if the majority party of the House is a Republican, the Speaker is going to be Republican. In 2017, as it stands, Paul Ryan, Republican, Speaker of the House. The Speaker also has referral power. Referral power is the ability to assign bills to committees, which is a very powerful position to be in, because if you like a bill, you can assign it to a committee that you know is going to work on it. If you don't like a bill, you can assign it to a committee that you know will not work on it. Again, the Speaker will always belong to the majority party. Under the Speaker, you have a majority leader. Really, in the House, all a majority leader does is assist the Speaker, organize the majority party's members, and just make sure that the policy or the platform of the majority party is adhered to. So the minority leader in the House is the head of the minority party. So right now that would be Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats. And what she does is she makes sure that the Democratic agenda and the Democrat platform is protected in the House. This right here is supposed to be under there. So what is the majority leader's role? To lead, or the minority leader's role is to lead the minority party. Party whip. A party whip is the leader that is responsible for maintaining the party unity score, which means they're responsible for making sure that everybody in the party votes the same way. And they communicate between the leadership positions and the regular congresspersons. Okay, in the Senate, the vice president presides over the Senate. It's more of a ceremonial role, but they do have a constitutional role of breaking ties, and we see that Mike Pence has played a role in breaking the ties in some important votes, because the Republicans have a slight majority in the Senate, and if they lose any Republican support, then they have to rely on Mike Pence to break a tie. President pro tempore. This is the oldest member, the longest serving member of the majority party, and it's really ceremonial. They preside over the Senate when the vice president isn't there. And they're supposed to, when the vice president is there, the president pro tem is supposed to run the chamber, but generally the president pro tem isn't going to run the chamber, so they pick some really eager junior Congress member, junior senator from their party to take that place while they're not there. The most powerful person in the Senate is the Senate Majority Leader. They're responsible for scheduling floor action and pushing their legislative agenda. You also have, in the Senate Majority Leader currently is Mitch McConnell, Turtle Man. The Senate Minority Leader, their role is to push the minority party's platform agenda, to protect the interests of the minority party in Senate. That's currently Chuck Schumer. Leadership, though, is not as powerful in the Senate. There's not as many people to control. The Speaker is a lot more powerful because they have 435 people that they have to rein in. And in the Senate, each individual senator has more control over the outcome of legislation than in the House. All right, committees and subcommittees. Committees, so Congress is broken down into small groups. So it's just like a classroom. You go into class, you have 30 kids there. You do some stuff as a whole class. But a lot of times your teacher's going to bust you down into smaller groups to really get the nitty-gritty work done. And that's exactly what happens in Congress. They work in small groups. Your committees and subcommittees are the workhorses of Congress. There are the different types of committees. Standing committees are going to make policy regarding permanent subject, stuff that's always going to need to be addressed in the United States, like as policy issues. So you have standing committees in the Senate and the House on agriculture. You have them on armed services, energy, so on and so forth. We're going to actually look at a list of standing committees for the assignment today, but you can check out that list on house.gov or senate.gov. There are joint committees. Joint committees are going to be made up of members of both the House and the Senate. There are select committees. Select committees are temporary. These would be a lot of your investigative committees that are formed to answer a question or solve a problem. And once that question is answered or that problem is solved, those committees dissolve. And then conference committees are a type of joint committee that occur at toward the end of the how a bill becomes a law process. What the point of a conference committee is to come up with a compromise. So once a bill has gone through the House, it may look one way, and that same bill has gone through the Senate, it may look like another thing. So the members of the House that worked on the bill and the members of the Senate that worked on the bill have to come together to hammer out a single cohesive version of that bill. And they do that in conference. So conference committees compromise. All right, how do you get on a committee? So you have to be on a committee because you're not going to get anything done, and you can't go back to your constituents and say, I didn't serve on a committee, I didn't do anything. All right, so you have to be assigned. So after an election, Congress people submit their preferences to the leadership. So new members write to the party's congressional leaders and the members of their state delegation indicating their committee preferences. Each party in the House has a slightly different way of picking committee members, but you don't have to know that. Really just know that a congressperson submits a request to the party leadership. And generally, members of the committee are going to ask to be on a committee, or people are going to ask to be on a committee to achieve three things. They want to be on a committee where they know that they can go back to their people and say, look, as I worked on this committee, I was able to get pork for you and do casework for you. They will want to be on a committee that has a lot of power and influence in Congress. And they're going to work on a committee that's going to have the opportunity to do things that they think are important. So like if I were to be in Congress, I would want to work on a committee where I had an opportunity to shape education legislation. But I also would want to be on a committee, since I'm from Hampton Roads, where I have the ability to secure maybe military spending for all of the naval installations and all the military installations in this area. And I'd also want to be in a committee that will give me a lot of influence and power, maybe something like the Ways and Means Committee. And we'll talk about that. The Ways and Means Committee works on tax policy. Okay, so members of both parties and members from both parties make up committees, but the committee chair will always be from the majority party. Okay. It used to be where if you wanted to be the chair of a committee, the person that's in charge of the committee, you had to be the longest serving member on that committee, but that's not the case anymore. You want to be the committee chair because they have a lot of power over whether or not a bill that the committee works on is going to get killed or passed. So it used to be your chairperson would come from be the longest serving person sitting on that committee that happens to be a member of the majority party. But that's not the case anymore. In the past, it was very much tied to a seniority system, and what you had was that powerful chairs would hold bills in committee, and the bills would die, and they wouldn't let those bills move on. And you had a lot of chair people that were long-serving incumbents because they came from safe districts and they held seniority. So they kind of would go in there, sit in committee, be committee chairs, and do what they want because they knew that they weren't going to be challenged for that position. But in the 1970s, you see that there was a revolt of the younger members of Congress, and they demand that the chairperson be based on merit as opposed to just simple seniority. All right, so that is leadership in committees in a nutshell.